Yo, hello. Yes, Skirk Story Quest. I had finished it last Friday, but I didn't actually make a video on it yet because I had to do a half marathon, and now that that's done, I can finally make the video. I got 2 hours and 30 minutes in the half marathon, which is not bad. Coincidentally, the 2 hours and 30 minutes is how long it took for me to finish Skirk Story Quest. So, I guess her story quest decided my fate in the half marathon. But anyways, yeah, overall, pretty solid quest. Like, can't lie. Had some good moments, had some good lore drops, had some character development, which I always like to see. And of course, it had some things that I was like, kind of iffy about. But yeah, we can talk about it. Yeah, basically the premise. I really liked the premise of this quest. It kind of takes place randomly in Liyue, where we have like a situation of the abyss going on, and like the entire setting is in Liyue. I thought that it was very nostalgic because I was playing on the English voice finally because a lot of voices are back. And Paimon has a new VA, and the voice direction for Paimon's new VA is very, very similar to the early days of Genshin Impact. So it really brought me back to exploring Liyue for the first time, because that was one of my favorite parts of Genshin, just getting to Liyue and exploring it. So yeah, it felt very nostalgic, had a very nostalgic feel to it. Who is Camo T28? Anyways, so essentially the premise of this story quest is that the traveler has some kind of irking going on, there's some pain going on, and it turns out that part of the traveler's soul has been taken away. And Skirk appears and goes, hey, that's related to the Abyss, which is something related to what I do, so let's do a transaction where if you help me find out the identity of this person taking the piece of your soul, then I will help you retrieve the piece of your soul back. And we're like, okay, great. And we have this chat over some Chinese food, which is nice, some Liyue-ian food. But my first criticism here is that the moment that Chef Mao was like, hey, why are you paying extra for your food? You didn't get that much food. And they go, wait, what? You didn't see the girl over here dining with us? And he goes, nope, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. Why do we have to do more memory manipulation? I dislike memory manipulation. I think it's a poor way to tell a story.
It was that lady who came and sat with us, remember? You brought it out to her yourself.
No way. No, no. I swear to God, I swear to the Archons, if I click spacebar right now and Chef Mao goes, what? What are you talking about? Who did you dine with besides the two of you? I did not see anyone. I swear to God, if that happens, I swear.
You sure?
Oh my God. There's some lore justification behind this because Skirk's like, because she's an outlander not from this planet, that she doesn't really want to involve herself into the affairs of the world. So, fair, like, I get that. But then, there are other ways you can go about that besides using memory manipulation. So, anyways, yeah, that point aside, Skirk offers to train us and then to, make us more stronger, to be able to react better to the entity that is taking away our powers. And the method that she does in order to find the identity of the person is this thing called dream mirroring, which is where when we fall asleep, she can look at our dreams because we're being attacked in our dreams. And it goes both ways, because we can also then look at Skirk's dreams and see what she's up to, unbeknowingly to her. So as we see her dreams, the backstory and the lore, it's pretty much covered by her backstory that's in the game. So I made another video on that, on her lore and backstory. But as a general summary, right, Skirk as a kid, she's from another planet. Her planet gets some visitors from beyond her planet, and then they're very friendly towards each other, but eventually they decide to eradicate Skirk's people and planet because they're afraid of how much potential her people have, because they can adapt and utilize any kind of power. So it goes to show how much potential Skirk has. She's saved by Surtalogi and essentially is trained under him to get strength, become stronger. I think one interesting thing is that in the dream flashbacks, we have Skirk's interactions with her parents, and her parents call her Skirk, which is funny because Skirk is the name given to her after she was saved by Surtalogi. So I don't know if it's because the writers forgot about this, or they didn't want to say what Skirk's real name is. I don't know, but I thought that was an inconsistency. That was interesting. I think that Skirk's main struggle as a character is that she had a dream as a kid, right? To want to explore the stuff beyond her planet, want to explore the unknown. but this is all taken away from her because her parents and her people were murdered. Surtalogi saves her, and Skirk kind of feels like some kind of obligation that she didn't really have a choice but to live, and so she trains under Surtalogi, and because Surtalogi saved her, she is pretty much feels obliged to follow in Surtalogi's footsteps with training, such as always suppressing your emotions, even though this directly conflicts with her parents' last wishes to her, where they tell her to stay alive, you need to be alive, don't fall into the darkness, which is ironic because she's using the powers of the abyss, the darkness. And that whenever you miss us, right, play this song, play your guitar to remember the songs of our people. And Surtalogi says that these are all weaknesses that you should be suppressing to further increase your own strength. And there's clear conflict here because even though Surtalogi says yes and follows his orders, we do have snippets where Skirk does have some, human moments where she does reminisce about her parents and her past and plays the guitar even during while the Traveler and Paimon are sleeping. So there's the clear conflict there that it's like she feels that she has to follow in the footsteps of Surtalogi, even though really her heart isn't in it. I think the other interesting thing between Skirk and the Traveler and Paimon is that Skirk does tell the Traveler that their swordsmanship reminds her of the sibling. So I think the implication there is that when Skirk had met Dainsleif during her travels, likely that was during the time when Dainsleif and the sibling were traveling together. So Skirk likely got to see the sibling swordsmanship in action. And then we go to fight with the abyssal-related being who pretty much ends up beating us because they're able to land a good shot and utilize a lot of the powers of the abyss. This is directly related to the Traveler being able to utilize abyssal power. As we know, the Traveler's sibling was meant to be an abyssal vessel during Conria, and so it's no surprise that it is not the case that the Traveler purifies abyssal energy. It's very likely the case that the Traveler just absorbs abyssal power, is able to become a vessel like their sibling for abyssal power. So, because this enemy has a piece of the Traveler's soul, they can utilize that to absorb and utilize abyssal power, which makes sense. So he's able to damage Skirk and steal a bit of her power, which makes us have to retreat. I really like this recovery scene between us and Skirk because Skirk is actually very open to accepting help from us. She recognizes that she's injured and she is open to receiving help, being watched over. And I thought it was a very sincere moment, seeing this kind of interaction from a character that, doesn't go, oh no, don't worry about me, I can handle this by myself. So I think it's also like a good hint to her own character that deep down inside, she's very open to accepting other people's help, despite her outward solo nature. And this is the main part of the story quest where we have actual character development, because the inner creature that's in Skirk's world leads us over to have a final confrontation and reveals to us that they are the embodiment of all of Skirk's abandoned and suppressed emotions. It's that humanity in Skirk that's desperately trying to reconcile with Skirk, trying to argue that, we know that the past was very painful, there's a lot of PTSD from the planet's destruction, but, it's worth facing these trauma head on, it's worth facing your past head on, and becoming stronger despite that. Right, moving forward, acknowledging your past and your challenges and such. The Traveler essentially says power friendship is better than fighting alone, which is a good point, and I think there's a lot of future potential in the narrative where Skirk's ideals of fighting together directly challenge Surtalogi's ideal of strength, which is abandoning emotion and just being the strongest that you can be by yourself. So yeah, Skirk does accept her suppressed emotions and has a new way of life, has a new perspective that she needs to further train herself on. I think my only criticism with this scene is that I felt that the character development for Skirk was a little too quick. She went from 0, which is like no emotions, to just completely accepting her own emotions back, just with some few words of dialogue, without really being challenged, in my opinion. I would have liked to see her being challenged in a way where she actually sees why it makes sense to accept her emotions and to be one with them. I also think that it would have been nice if Childe was involved in Skirk's character development, because as we see from previews and teasers that Skirk does have some kind of hidden soft spot for Childe, and I think it would have been interesting to try to utilize Childe's new perspective and his growth as a person to influence Skirk's development. You know, I think when they eventually meet again in the future, it'll be kind of off because Childe's gonna be like, "Hey, Master, why are you being so nice? You're not as cold as you once were." And you know, I would wish that Childe would have helped Skirk in this case, but that was my main gripe with this. Overall, it's solid because it is a good place for Skirk to end up. I just thought it was a little too quick. Anyways, so after recovering, we go back to the Abyssal Being. We pretty much just defeat him with our new profound strength and whatnot. So yeah, and he turns out to be someone from Khaenri'ah. His name is Skofnungr, and he used to be a friend of Surtalogi's. I think the very interesting part about this is that Surtalogi had offered to cure him of the Curse of Immortality, which is, of course, another insane feat that Surtalogi may or may not be able to do. The fact that he's confident enough in curing the Curse of Immortality. So I think it goes to show why Dainsleif is so mad, because it really seems like the case that Surtalogi and the other 4 sinners would have been able to stop the Cataclysm of Khaenri'ah. In fact, Surtalogi also says that, hey, Dainsleif's older brother, Vedolfonr, one of the other sinners, has never had a wrong prophecy, which is another pretty crazy feat for a sinner. So I think eventually when we see Khaenri'ah, just like the whole abilities and what the sinners are and what they're able to do is gonna be pretty mind-blowing, and it's pretty wild. But yeah, as for Skofnungr, I think Skirk has an interesting moment here because she kind of offers to hold his consciousness to try and fix his body for an eventual moment down the road where maybe he's able to witness the battle between Skirk and Surtalogi, and eventually maybe see Skirk defeat Surtalogi, something that he himself wasn't able to do. He was never able to be better than Surtalogi. And so I think it would be a fitting character arc for him to see Surtalogi having a satisfactory defeat. So Skirk is kind of carrying his will with her into the future, which I think is a pretty cool touch. Yeah, we pretty much get back the Traveler's Soul. Everything is all good, and I don't think we'll see Skirk again for another few years, probably. I'm not sure if she's gonna appear in Nod Krai. If she does, I hope that Childe is involved somehow, but it seems like for now, Skirk is kind of just handling her own thing, needs to just become stronger in her own way with other people, perhaps, make new companions in order to challenge Surtalogi. So likely whenever Surtalogi gets into the plot, then we'll see Skirk again, but for now, thought it was a pretty solid quest. Had some few gripes here and there, but you know, I had a good time. It felt like a nostalgic Genshin quest in a way, which I thought was really nice. So yeah, I'm a very big fan of Liga. I think Skirk's a pretty cool character. Yeah, thank you for the lore. Like, it's nice seeing all this lore about Surtalogi, 5 sinners, and really feels like the more time goes on, it's like, yeah, this really is heading towards Genshin endgame material. So cool. Yeah, that'll be it for this video. Very solid as ice quest. Alright, thank you for watching. Alright, take care.